Good morning and welcome back to the channel. We finally are going to be getting back to some wiring on the CJ5 project. We're going to start in the engine bay, in the passenger compartment. We have a few things to hook up in here, at least initially, to get my ignition system working. And since I don't have a dash panel yet, I've got to get a ground hooked up here. On the steering column, and this is for anybody, obviously, if you're building your Jeep right now, you need to adjust your brake switch so you can hook up the brake switch, but you need to adjust that, and it is not easy to get to make sure that you are getting proper contact in there. As you can see, I had to actually drop the column down a little bit. And then we're going to hook up our turn signal hookup and our ignition wires. And these will hook right into the column, into the plugs there. These ones will be saved for later. Over on the other side here, we have on the passenger side, we have two simple things to hook up. One is just plugging in our resistor in our HVAC system here. The other is, there are two gray wires here. And these are for an accessory. There's the one is number 901, the other one is number 906. Now 901 is a separate fuse in the box there for an accessory, not a radio, but any kind of 12-volt accessory that you need to have a switched power source in the passenger compartment. 906 is actually an extension of that wire. Let me just make sure I don't have those numbers backwards. Excuse me, I do have them backwards. 906 is in the passenger compartment and it comes off the fuse panel, and that is for a switched accessory in, inside the tub. If you're running an air compressor in here and you need to switch a relay or something of that nature. What you need to do is out in the engine compartment, I'm going to use it for my electric fan. You hook it up to number 901, which is the switched accessory in the engine bay. So this will then make 901 live out in the engine bay, and it goes right to here. It's actually already marked for electric fans. On the fuse panel here, let me just turn my light around. You can actually see it's actually marked. It's got a 5 amp fuse in it right now. I'm going to have to probably replace that with at least a 10. It's only going to the relays, or 10 or 15. It says maximum 20. But bottom line, it will then feed that circuit out in the engine bay so that over here, I'm going to get a little ahead of myself. 901. I had all this already worked out and thought of, and then I went and worked on my deck for a few weeks and totally got myself screwed up right in here. Okay, 901. And then that'll make this wire live, and it'll be switched off the ignition, and that's going to drive the relays for my electric fans. So I'm going to get started there. I'm going to go ahead and get that brake light switch hooked up, get the plugs put in on the steering column, and get this ground wire mounted, and I'll come back and show you that when that's done, because then I'll have the steering column back up into place. Then we'll get the others hooked up, the other two on the other side hooked up quickly. Then we'll be able to move into the engine bay. Okay, got the brake switch plugged in. Let's see if we can get the camera up in here. I'm caught on the wires. And get a little light up in there. Okay, now all the things you read online about that brake switch being a pain in the rear to get to and hook up, they're all true. So, got that hooked up. Now, the ignition switch, according to Painless's instructions, there apparently is a difference between the tilt and non-tilt wheel. Their instructions say that with a tilt wheel, it should be plugged in with the clear plug toward the firewall and the black toward the steering wheel. I just spent an hour looking online, looking things up, trying to get information, then called Painless because I was a little confused because I'm like, I thought I had the right switch when I rebuilt the steering column. Every picture I see online of the switch for this steering column tilt wheel looks identical to mine. So I finally called Painless, was able to get somebody there. They had just opened. The guy in tech I spoke to said, don't worry about it, just plug it in whatever way it fits. I guess that's a typo. They've been trying, he says they've been trying to get them to take it out of the instructions. So if you come across that, bottom line, just make sure you have the correct switch for your column and plug it in. The white one goes in first, then the black one. And then as you can see, I've got the turn signal plug plugged in. That only goes one way, so you kind of can't mess that one up. Okay, so I got to just do the ground on the other side, connect the two wires and the plug on in here, and then we'll be done in here for now. I'm going to go ahead and hook my column back up and get that back up into place. Everything's back together here. Get some light on. Have our ground connected to a clean part of the body. Steering column's back up in place. Brake light switch is all hooked up. I would definitely encourage anyone, if you're putting something together like this, make sure you adjust that brake light switch while you have easy access. You know, you can check the continuity with a voltmeter, just to make sure that it is working good, because once it is in place, it is not easy to get to. Going to come back around to the passenger side. You know, as I showed before, we have the ignition switch and the turn signals all hooked up. Basically, all that's left now is, you know, all your gauges, your headlight switch, wiper motor, gauge connections. There's switchables for radio. I did hook up the accessory, connected these two together. This obviously could also be a power source if you had like an amplifier or something like that you were doing in the engine compartment for the radio. Though I do think there is an additional wire already in with the radio wires for something of that nature. Obviously this is hooked up for the heater. So inside the tub, I have everything that I need hooked up at this time. Obviously the harness is going to have to get, you know, mounted up into here, but that will come later as I get my dash panel in. Now we're going to get into the engine bay. And this is, you know, excuse me if you hear me pause here and there as I just try and keep everything straight in my head. I have the wires run roughly how they're going to go. I'm going to have to obviously secure them up into the against the firewall as I start laying them out. Let's come over here. This would be your neutral safety switch, your reverse light switch, your four-wheel drive indicator. That's going to run down the firewall. I do have, I'm going to have to clean it up yet. Where did it go? I do have, oh, right here. My bad. This is an actual CJ harness that will plug, factory harness that will plug in, and this does your four-wheel drive indicator and your reverse light indicator. I just need to clean it up, put some new lume on it, check all the continuity on the wires, make sure everything is good. There are the correct adapters with the Painless kit to connect that to this harness so that everything works. This right now is not something I'm going to be working with. Okay, I'm going to start from the top here. These two wires here, this is our oil pressure sending unit and our temperature sensor wires for the Painless kit. For the Painless wiring harness that will take it to your gauges. Now my EFI system has its own temperature sending unit, so that's completely separate from the factory gauge that you're going to have on the dash. This wire right here is a wire that, it's a power wire. Oh, let me put my glasses on, I can give you the number. Not that I I think that is totally relevant, but all the wires, what's nice is all the wires are definitely marked here with the Painless kit. This is number 920, which is a power wire that is active while starting, while cranking, and then in the run position. That is going to be hooked to, I've got 3 wires with the EFI system, distributor, coil, and the actual EFI ECM as well. So that's going to drive those. That's going to have to get all run. Here are my points wires, which basically is just internal with the EFI system. Those are going to have to get hooked up together. Okay. Just trying to keep these all organized. This is an electric choke wire and AC compressor activation. I don't think I'm using those at this time. Right here is accessory wires off of the fuel injection system. This is for fans 1 and 2. The light blue is fan 1. The light green is fan 2. That goes to my electric fans. This pink and blue wire, that will activate the relays. The pink one is my fan 1, the blue one is my fan 2. So I'm going to have to connect those together, and that will drive my fan relays. This yellow wire's got to get run across the engine bay and into the tub compartment. This is actually my fuel gauge wire that was part of my electric pump harness that I ran up the frame. This I will actually be hooking into the Delphi plug for the rear harness, and then that will plug right into the Painless system, and that will give my fuel sending unit signal for a fuel gauge. All right, right here we actually have that 901 wire, the accessory wire that I had to connect together in the tub area, bringing power out for these 2 gray wires, which are the power wires for my relays for my fan, for my electric fans. We obviously have numerous power and ground wires. This is this one here. These are the blower motor and blower motor ground. And this one here is, I believe this was the this is an alternator exciter. I got to double check on this one. I don't believe my alternator requires this one. So some of the wires will not be being used. This purple wire here is a tachometer signal. So this will be hooking up to one of these brown wires. I can't remember if it's the dark or the light brown. That will send tachometer signal from the fuel injection system into the painless harness, and that will then go to my factory gauge or my dash gauge. And that's the main wires that I have to hook up. There's going to be a lot of organization that I'm going to have to do as I come in here, because again, I'm going to have, I'm estimating roughly 5 to 6 power and ground wires, and I do not want all of those hanging off my terminals. So I did order a couple bus bars that I think I'm going to mount up here. That would just give me an additional mounting point to just help clean things up. So I'm going to start laying them out and connecting things together. It's going to be kind of hard for me to film while I'm doing that, but what I'm going to do is do a portion, come in, show what I did, do a portion, come in and show what I did. I think that's going to be the best way to do it. That will make it the cleanest. And I might actually end up putting that into the third part of this video and go ahead and end this one here. I'm sorry if this one's not real exciting. It's kind of a lot of organization. But I think I'll go ahead and do that. I think I'm going to end part 2 right here, so I can get this up for everybody, and then I'll put the connecting of these wires into part 3. So I thank you all for watching. If you have any comments or suggestions, please feel free to leave them below. If you like what we're doing here, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.